very first episode of Reverse Ambition, a podcast that features those who took a leap of faith to follow their dreams and passions. I am your host, Kelsey Cooper, aka The Social Broker, and today I will be rapping with my good friend Shana Renee Stephenson, simply known as It's Shana Renee on the gram. She has been an entrepreneur for a while now. She has a very interesting story of her journey to be where she is currently. She started out as a chemistry major in college, then changed into psychology. After college, she dabbled in fashion, and now she's a sports analyst in a male-dominated field. She also surprised me about a new role she's about to take on. I don't want to give away too much of our convo. You're just going to have to listen to her share her amazing journey. I hope you enjoy it. All right, let's welcome Shana Renee.
Thanks for having me, Kelsey.
No worries. Thank you for being my very, very first guest. It's like a humbling experience.
I feel like that's a lot of pressure.
It ain't no pressure, girl. We're talking like we've known each other for forever, right?
Yeah, we have known each other for a while.
Plus, I got a glass of wine to calm my damn nerves.
Oh, I should have poured a glass of wine. I'm good, though.
You're good? You're good?
You should have let me know that's what we were doing. I didn't know that's what we were doing.
This conversation is like in a coffee shop, chopping it up, catching up. One time people are busy as hell in their lives, and you got a good friend that you haven't had a chance to reach out to, and you finally, let's catch up, and after like multiple times of trying to meet, you finally meet, and then we just dive into what's going on in each other's lives. That's basically what this conversation is going to be like.
All right. Well, I'm excited to get it going.
All right, cool. So let's get it started. Take me through your journey, girl. Where did it all start? Like, you're a psychology major, and you're now a sports analyst, and you like all sports, everything. Where did it all start? Like,
So I was a sports fan as young as I can remember. My brother was an athlete. He's 5 years older than me, and he played football starting at age 6. So I basically was around sports straight out the womb. And then he played football from age 6 all the way through college. And as a family, we were always in attendance at his games. And it just kind of became the culture of our family, the lifestyle of our family. I like to refer to sports as our love language.
Wow.
We have group chats, like our family has group chats where we talk about sports and specifically the Knicks. And so it was also a way for me to bond with my father. Okay. I remember as a young girl, just like staying up late at night, watching Mike Tyson fights, even if they only lasted 16 seconds.
Right.
But like,
I remember those. I used to be so mad about
Remember those?
Hell yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but that was another way for us to connect over sports. And then even my mom, I remember her being the loudest one cheering at all of my brother's games. So it was never uncommon for me to think that women and sports didn't go together, because my mom was a huge sports fan. And again, my dad included me and her in everything that we did as a family as it related to sports. So it just kind of came natural to me. And then as I got older, a lot of the guys that I dated in high school and college and after college would always comment on how knowledgeable I was about sports and
you was that girlfriend, huh?
I was.
You was that girlfriend, like, y'all could watch football together, and you're like, oh.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I would debate. Kelsey, I
don't play.
I got a smart mouth on me, so
right.
So I would debate about this athlete versus that athlete, or contracts and stats. And so after hearing it for so long that I knew a lot about sports, and people saying that maybe you should work in sports, I finally decided to look into it. And at the time I had worked in fashion for a little bit, and then I pivoted from fashion into straight marketing.
Right.
And so I thought that I would be able to leverage that marketing experience and, parlay that into a sports marketing job, which proved to be a lot more difficult than I anticipated. Sports is a very, very competitive industry,
Right.
much like entertainment or music or anything that's considered sexy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where my master's degree came in, because every job that I applied to, even though I knew that on paper I had really great experience, they were looking for someone who either had internships, who had a master's degree, or who had real experience in the industry. And that was something that I couldn't offer. And so I made the decision to get my master's, and I went to NYU part-time. I still maintain a full-time job. Yeah. And as soon as I was accepted into the program at NYU, hadn't even taken a class, I just updated my resume. And then suddenly I started getting callbacks from ESPN, from NBA, from the Tennis Association, from a bunch of sports organizations that otherwise had overlooked my resumes because it didn't have those keywords recruiters and headhunters look for.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so I ended up accepting a position at ESPN, and that started my sports career, and that was in '07.
Okay.
And so it was great, and it was something that I had to take a pay cut. I was a marketing manager in my previous role, and then I had to go back down to being a marketing coordinator. But these were all strategic decisions and sacrifices that I was willing to make.
Right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in order to be in the industry that I wanted to be in.
Right. Now, question.
So that's how it all got started.
Okay, so you went to school for psychology, but so during that whole time you were in college, you were just a big sports fanatic. So why didn't you dive into something sports related major in college? Undergrad.
Well, actually, I started at Spelman as a chemistry major,
Wow.
as a chemistry pre-med major. Yeah.
Okay, so why chemistry pre-med? See, I didn't know this. Why chemistry pre-med? What got you? I mean, like how, families are. You're going to be a lawyer, doctor. Mm-hmm. Was that
exactly
the reason why you wanted something safe? Plus,
exactly.
In my experience, I was like the first one to go away for college, so I didn't want to do anything crazy. I wanted to do the arts or philosophy or anything. I wanted something that would get me a job right out of college, because I know the sacrifices that was made for me to go, so.
Well, yeah, so I definitely was like, I'm going to be a doctor, and I had committed to myself to being a doctor for years. And in high school, chemistry was one of my easiest subjects, even though, chemistry was one of my easiest subjects. I was in AP math. I was kind of a nerd back in the, I still kind of am a nerd, but
chemistry, chemistry was easy. That's not kind of a nerd. You were a nerd.
Yeah, chemistry was easy, but when I got to Spelman, chemistry was not easy. It was a completely different world.
Right.
And so me changing my major to psychology was really out of survival, to be honest, Kelsey, because I wasn't doing well, and I wasn't failing, but I wasn't getting great grades, and my GPA had slipped, and this is my first semester, and I just wasn't making a good impression.
So you
my
switched
freshman
up?
year, first semester.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was struggling, and that was new to me. And so I was like, all right, at this point, my GPA, because once your GPA drops,
right,
it's hard to get it back up. So I was like, okay, what can I do that'll be
was
easy?
Psychology the easiest thing, or was it something?
It was one of the easiest things, because I was like, all I need to do is read and write at this point. Right. You know what I mean? It's like reading books, writing papers, and that would allow me to bring my GPA up. So that's what I did. And then I eventually dropped the pre-med altogether. And then because what some people don't know about Spelman and Morehouse is that, and Clark, is that you can take classes at each other's schools.
Oh, that's
And
dope.
so, yeah, so while Morehouse has a really great finance program, and so I was able to take most of my psychology classes at Spelman for my major, and then create a minor that was more business centric,
Mm-hmm.
and take a lot of those classes at Morehouse. So I was kind of creating a marketing track for myself, even though that's not what I started out
Right.
doing. You see
So,
what I'm saying?
yeah. I mean, so during this whole time, you were just sports was like a hobby or like a side thing. It's not
Yeah,
something
and
you
it
really focus
wasn't.
on.
Yeah, sports wasn't anything that I focused on. It wasn't anything that I thought I could have a career in, to be honest. It was
Mm,
something that came very, very easy to me. And I was of the mindset that, work was hard. Work
mm.
wasn't something that was enjoyable.
Right.
Like work is not fun.
Right. You
And
hit the nail. You
so,
hit the nail on the head right there. You said, just because it comes easy to you, like you disregard it as like, oh, this is too easy. This is not
mhm,
supposed to be. I can't make money. This is easy. This is like fun. So a lot of us pretty
exactly,
much like,
exactly.
you know, not focus on things that comes easy to comes natural to us, and try to fit into a traditional mode. And I think
Right.
that's what happens to a lot of us.
But then, but it's like that saying that when you do what you love, is like you never work a day again in your life, or whatever that saying is. But I wasn't familiar with that
Mm-hmm.
as a college student, or even, in my early 20s. I
Right.
wasn't familiar with that mindset.
Right. Right. Well, so I'm sorry, I took you back to your college years, and I know you went and got your master's at ESPN. I mean, excuse me, master's at NYU, and then you started ESPN as a marketing. How long were you at ESPN?
I was only there for 3 years.
Only 3 years. That's a long time, girl. My
It's,
thing is 2 years. I'm like, I was like,
is it?
I was so worried about staying at a location for so long. I was like, two and done. Just make sure I have enough time for my resume to put on my
Right.
resume. And I'm like, okay, I'm done. Keep it moving. So 3 years is a adequate amount of time to be somewhere. How was that experience?
Well, for me, so I didn't intend, I didn't know how long I was going to be there. I mean, for me, ESPN was a dream job, as I think
Mm-hmm.
it would be for most people who are sports fans. Um, and like I said before, I took a pay cut, and I basically accepted a demotion as well. But my
Mm-hmm.
mindset was to be promoted, because up until that point, I was always promoted in every position that I had within a year.
Right.
And so having that same work ethic, I expected kind of the same thing to happen. But at ESPN, and particularly in their marketing department, that's just not how it works. They're more so into lateral, not promotions, but they make you have a lot of lateral moves,
Mm-hmm.
and they have I guess what is considered like a rotational program. So you can work on the NBA, and then transition to working on soccer, and then transition to working on basketball or baseball. And that didn't work for me, because I was like, I knew that I needed to be advancing. And I didn't feel like I was being utilized to the best of my ability.
Right.
So after 3 years, I got bored, and I
You
just
got
felt
bored.
like I felt like I was devalued
Oh
too.
wow.
And that
You
was
didn't feel
kind of like,
appreciated. You felt
I
overlooked.
didn't.
I think 9 to 5s do that for us, right?
Exactly.
So you're like the small fish in a pond where you're used to being, the star everywhere you go, right? Was that
Yes. And so I was just like, I need to do something that makes me feel more fulfilled, and
mm,
I feel like I can better use my voice and my creativity and all of that great stuff. And I left.
Right, right. Did
I was
you,
like, I'm out.
is
I'm
that
out.
okay? Did you
And
just leave for another job, or did you just like, okay, I'm going to,
no, so that's when I left to go out and do my own thing. So the
right. Wow. That's crazy. Did you have a game
yeah,
plan? Did you
so
have like a strategic plan
I
or
did. So my dad doesn't play that. Like my dad is very my
no
dad is
parents play
yeah,
that. They're like, what, you're leaving
yeah.
a good paying job for what?
Especially black parents, you know what I mean? Like,
Exactly.
mm-mm. So my dad was like, you need a business plan. I need to see your business plan.
Oh,
He
wow.
wanted to know, he wanted to know that I was thinking about this from a realistic place and not
Mm,
reacting out of emotion or anything like that. You know, he
right.
wanted to make sure that I'd really given it some thorough evaluation and consideration. And so I did that.
You did you do
And so
you created a business plan.
yeah, I created a business
What
plan.
was the business plan? What was the business that you were planning?
So the business that I was planning was a sports marketing agency. And so what I wanted to do was work with athletes and work with female athletes and then work with male athletes who weren't like top tier athletes, but maybe like BC level athletes that are often overlooked as far as endorsements or marketing opportunities go,
Right.
and figure out ways to get them some money.
Right.
And also, like I had mentioned earlier, I had worked in fashion for a little while, and
Mhm.
so I also had a love for fashion, and so part of that was also to do image consulting, so styling, because I had taken classes at FIT,
Okay.
so styling and really trying to merge my marketing and my fashion background
And you incorporated
together.
all that in your business plan, and your father was like,
Exactly.
"Wow, okay, this is well thought
Yeah,
out."
he was like, yeah, okay, this seems like, this could be a great idea.
Okay.
But little did I know is that the NBA and the NFL were both going to have a lockout. And that
Oh,
meant that athletes weren't really trying to spend money. And so I would take meetings. I remember going to like the NFL draft parties. I was like in those streets trying to hustle and get
this
meetings
is
with
right after you
athletes.
left ESPN, and you just
ESPN, yeah.
dive head in into your working your
My
plan.
business, recruiting, exactly,
Right.
pitching. And I'd get great meetings, I'd get opportunities, and there'd be interest. And then when it was time to actually talk dollars, suddenly athletes were like, oh, I don't know if I could, pay for this because I don't know what's going to happen with the future of the league
I
and
mean,
my
you were a
job.
startup. You weren't charging like ridiculous amount of money. I
No,
mean, it was just an
I
excuse.
wasn't. Exactly, it was an excuse.
Hmm.
And it was like, because you don't know what's going to happen, this is even more reason why you need to make sure that your brand remains strong out
Right.
there,
Right.
and you seek other opportunities. But at the same time, I started a blog, which I had wanted to start when I was at ESPN, but I figured there might be a conflict of interest.
Mm.
Um, and so I waited until I left to start it. And
How
like,
long out, did you start? Did you start like 6 months, a year?
um, no, it might have been a few months, like maybe 3 months.
Okay, girl, you work fast.
Yeah, it wasn't,
You
it
work
wasn't that
fast.
long, but the blog wasn't supposed to be like a business. It
Mm.
was more so supposed to be just kind of like a hobby where I just updated it, here and there. And I'm a Knicks, Jets, Yankees fan.
Yeah, I know.
And
Trust me, I
so,
know.
so it was an opportunity for me to just kind of like vent,
Right.
about my teams. And I'd send the link to my brother and to my parents, and I'd post it on Facebook, but I didn't really expect anybody to read it.
Right.
And
It's
then
just
next
for
thing I
you.
knew,
It was just for you.
yeah, it was
So,
really just for me.
right. So,
But
was
people
this like a
started reading
pivot?
it.
Was this a pivot, or is this something that you were just doing as a hobby while still pursuing your?
Yeah, it was. it was something that I was doing as a hobby initially, but
Mm-hmm.
then my brother saw the potential in my blog.
Oh, okay.
And at the time, you know, even though I had set out to do my sports marketing agency, and I had some clients, but it wasn't lucrative, it wasn't sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, well, I really see more opportunity with your blog. Like, I see huge potential for your blog, so maybe you should focus more of your energy there.
Right.
And it, at the time, wasn't what I wanted to hear.
Wow. What did you want to
But,
hear, actually?
well, I wanted my sports marketing agency to pop off.
Right.
You know, that's what I had set out to do, and that's what I wanted to be successful at.
Right.
But I saw that he was right, and I recognized that, yeah, like, things aren't growing at the rate that I had hoped it would grow. So I do need to do something else.
But
And so
then again, you say you started as 3 months out, right? So it's only 3 months you've been away. You know.
no, at this point, no, because so the blog I had started out as a hobby, and then I started on like Blogger or whatever, which I don't even think exists anymore. And then once I moved it to WordPress, because people started reading it, and, you know, the audience started to grow beyond just like my immediate family. And I started to get more engagement with it, and that might have been like 2 years in.
Oh, okay. So
Like,
this is like 2 years removed from, you know, a 9-to-5 job. You was doing your thing, no money coming in. You had to figure things out quickly.
Or little money coming in, very little money coming in. Yeah.
Right. And you had to pay rent. And how did you do it during that time? Did you rely on your savings or?
Yep. So I relied on my savings, which goes much faster than you anticipate. Because I think what a lot of entrepreneurs, like, when you quit your job, and if you are thoughtful about it, you do have a little cushion for yourself, right? And you're like, oh, well, I'm going to work from home. But what happens too is that you kind of want that sexy experience of going to lunch and working out at cafes, especially in the summer.
All that stuff,
you know what I mean?
up.
Like, you want to get yourself a little glass of rosé with your laptop. It's like very Carrie Bradshaw, very like Sex in the City. Like, I want my laptop, I want my glass of rosé, I want to, you know, take myself to lunch while I eat. Or you're also, when you're trying to pitch clients, you're also taking them out to eat a lot.
Right.
So while I would initially start out doing dinners would turn into lunches would then turn into
coffee,
a breakfast, and breakfast would turn into just like, let's meet for coffee, you know, because then it was like, all right, I really don't have the funds to do this anymore.
Right.
Money is my savings is getting really slim, and I really need to cut back.
It went quicker than you thought it would, right? It
did. And then even like, I got to a point where I was like, I need to just have all my meetings in Harlem. Like, I cannot take a subway. Like, I need to preserve my swipe, you know?
Right.
So where do we want to meet? Let's meet within walking distance of my apartment. That's where I want to meet.
I just realized what you say. You had to preserve your swipe. I could relate to that.
Yeah.
I could relate. And it's like when I had my job, I had, like, you know, it came out of my paycheck. So I did not see the money that I was paying for, you know, a train fare, you know, going back and forth to work. And it was unlimited. So now when I had a job, when I left my job, I didn't have that luxury of coming out of my money, my paycheck automatically. I had to pay, you know, $20, $30, and that, you know, for a train ticket,
a Metro card.
Yeah. And I was like, that's joint, and it's not limited, right? It's not
limited.
And you see that swipe, you're like, God damn. You know, like, it goes quicker than you realize, you know.
It does.
Certain things we took for granted when we had 9-to-5s, but when you become an entrepreneur, you start watching every penny and every move.
Every penny.
Right.
every penny. And so I was really like, you really, really have to be um, conscious about how you spend your money. Like, so, like, manicures weren't happening. It was just like things that I took for granted.
Right.
Suddenly, I really had to cut back and be
Mm.
like, okay, I don't need this manicure. I don't need to eat out. I just, like I said, like, I don't need to leave Harlem.
Right.
um, and so then also I would consult. I was able to find other consulting opportunities that weren't necessarily sports related,
Mm-hmm.
but they afforded me an opportunity to make some money
Right.
on the side. So I did that for a while too. But yeah, I mean, it just was, it was a eye-opening experience for sure. I think that, we go into it with these grand plans for ourselves, and then it's a rude awakening,
Right.
because it's a lot more difficult than you expect it to be. At least
Right.
it was for me.
So you pivot.
Everyone is different.
Right. So you pivot. Trust me, I can relate. It's not about me. I could go into my story, but this is about you. But I can relate. I can relate. Everything you're saying, I can relate to. So you say you transitioned from, being a sports marketing company. Now
Yeah,
your family, your brother
writing.
specifically said, you need to be a blogger. No,
Yep.
so how did that play out? How did that, go for you in terms of, focusing on that?
Yeah, so that was shocking for me because I didn't go to school for writing. So I have
Right.
no journalism background. I wasn't an English major, and that was just kind of something that I developed on the fly, like creating a voice for myself where people were able to relate to my voice and hear what I had to say,
Right.
whether it was me talking about the Knicks or me speaking about sports from a business perspective, or what's going on culturally within sports. That was something that people were kind of like expecting me to speak out on.
Right.
And then from there, that led to TV opportunities, that led to speaking engagements, that led to other writing opportunities and, paid opportunities. And so that became my shtick for a very, very long time. And that's where I was. So people knew me for my blog as All Sports Everything.
Right.
Um,
I remember
and
seeing you on
so,
TV. I said, look at Shana. Look at her doing her thing. I was like,
yeah,
I mean,
and that was never part of the plan initially, Kelsey. When I
right.
left ESPN, I had no visions of that for myself.
Well, Shana,
None.
listen, I remember, I mean, this is when I still had my 9 to 5 and I ran into you. I probably was in Harlem. And you were
Mhm.
like, girl, you were like, man, I think I'm about to get a 9 to 5. And I was like, this is not
Yeah.
working. And I was like, don't do it, don't do it. I mean, of course, I was like, I was doing it for like selfish reasons because you were like my
Yeah.
inspiration. Because I'm like, you took that leap, and you're doing your thing, and I was like, don't do it, stick with it, because I wanted that inspiration. Because I was like,
Right.
because I was looking to do the same, and you were like, you stay with it. So I
Bec-
remember when you were going through that. Was that around rock bottom for you when when I ran into you that time?
Maybe, but I mean, I feel like we had that conversation more than more
I,
than
I just
once. And
remember
then
one good time.
I remember also having that conversation with Fabrice a few times. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there were like a lot of times when I was like on the brink. But what happens is that the universe, God, whatever that spiritual entity is for you,
Mm-hmm.
sends you signs that says, no, stick with it. So
Right.
it might have been, me getting another TV opportunity, or me
Okay.
being invited to speak somewhere, or me, being offered to write somewhere. So there were always these signs and the ways that the universe would respond to me in kind and saying like, no, this is what you need to do. And I always believed that this was my purpose.
Mm.
And that was the other thing is
Your
that,
purpose. That's like powerful. Like that's like your purpose. You're supposed to be here because you weren't
Exactly.
chasing the money. You were chasing a purpose. You were chasing like,
Yes.
okay, okay.
Yeah. And so and I was talking to someone about this earlier this week, as it relates to me accepting, now I'm going back to a regular 9 to 5, which is crazy.
Oh,
And,
you are?
yeah, so
All
the
right, hold on,
VP
hold
of
on.
marketing position,
Okay, that's a full-time job?
that's that's a
Okay.
full-time job. And the reason that I accepted it was because it is very much aligned with my overall purpose in terms of me being able to amplify the voices and the platforms of female athletes, and particularly Black female athletes as WNBA players. But what I'm most excited about this position is that it's taking everything that I've done over the years and allowing me to do that for this team. And
Right.
I feel like it's given me an opportunity to have a greater impact than I would be able to have continuing to be independent and work for myself.
Right.
And so for the past year, I've consulted with the New York Liberty, and we've had some great success. But, there's certain resources that are limited with you being on the outside, and certain decisions that are still made, even though you're responsible for a particular scope of work. There are still some decisions that are made outside of you. And I felt like with me accepting this position, like everything falls on me, good or bad, which is great and what I want.
Right.
And so I'm really excited about it, because at the heart of what I love to do is tell stories, whether that's through creating content, whether that like video content, whether that's through me interviewing people, writing.
When did you realize the heart of what you want to do was tell stories? I mean, that was from day one, or it just evolved? You just figured things out,
That's a great question. So when I started my blog, the impetus for me starting my blog was centered around the media industry being predominantly white male, and the NBA and the NFL being predominantly Black male, and just, that discrepancy there and the disproportionate rate that exists between those two groups.
Right.
And this was in, say, 2010, 2011, when Twitter really wasn't what Twitter is today. Instagram didn't exist, and athletes still didn't at the time recognize how powerful they were. And in owning their voice, in owning their brand, in telling their own stories. Platforms like the Players Tribune, Derek Jeter's website didn't exist yet. And so athletes were still relying on media, white male media, to convey their stories. And I just felt like there was a disconnect there, because these media writers often use a lot of coded language that was demeaning to particularly Black men.
Right.
And they, marginalized Black female athletes altogether. And I felt that as a Black woman who relates to Black female athletes and relates to Black male athletes, just inherently of us being Black in a shared culture, I was able to offer a different perspective, and one that was supportive, and one that was like an advocate for them. And that was something that I felt like was missing. And so through that, I really made it my
purpose.
I made it my priority, or my purpose, yes, to be an advocate for these athletes and to tell their stories from a different perspective that I felt like was missing. And even though, it wasn't like All Sports Everything was doing like ESPN type numbers, it was still reaching enough people for people to relate to what I was saying and for it to get some sort of recognizability.
Right.
So, for example, like the first time that I went on TV, it was because a producer wanted to do a segment on the lack of Black head coaches in D1 basketball.
Mm-hmm.
And I had written about that. And
Oh,
so
wow.
they saw,
Okay.
yeah, and they saw an article that I wrote on my blog, and, you know, they considered me to be an expert. And they
Wow.
invited
How did
me
that
on.
make you feel? You're like, word,
It was,
me? Did you like second
yeah,
guess yourself,
no.
or did you like, you know what, I'm gonna own this? I'm gonna
So
like.
what's funny is that the producer was like, "Oh, so you've done TV before?" And I was like, "Yes, of course." Had never done TV before,
Wow.
but you know, what am I gonna say?
Right,
No,
right. Well, I mean,
you know, of course,
this is the
I want
universe
this opportunity.
conspiring to help you, you know.
Exactly.
And that's a lot of things that, you know, a lot of things that we do, we kind of like, you know, get in our own way, you know, like, oh, I'm not
Mhm.
good enough for this. Oh no, I'm not worthy. And you know, a lot of times that's
Yep.
what I learned is like, get out of your own way, dude. Like,
Yep.
you know, you're stopping your own blessing. Chill.
I agree.
So this is one of those moments where you're like, you know what? I've never done this before, but you know, God, the universe is like, you ready? And you were like, you dived in. Were you nervous, of
Yep.
course, being on TV? I'm sure.
I'm nervous every time I'm on TV, you know, and I've been on TV enough. I've been on TV more than most people, but I'm still nervous every single time. I don't think I don't know. I don't know anyone who's never not nervous,
Right.
no matter how much experience you have. And especially when it's live TV, because anything can happen, you know,
Right.
anything can go wrong.
Right.
But yeah, so for me, that was kind of when I started recognizing that I had an opportunity to really make an impact. And so I just started owning that more and
Owning that more.
really,
That's key word right there. Owning it more, not being afraid. Just, you
mhm,
know, not knowing, for example, you say you weren't a writer, you became a writer, right?
right,
So you figured it out.
right.
And you say you've
Yeah,
never been on TV. So you're like, okay, I'm going to do TV. And you figured it out,
yep,
right? And these are
yep.
all new platforms, new opportunities that you've never envisioned yourself, you know, to have or doing, right?
And
So,
then I just realized like there were certain, um, like content creation wasn't really what it is now
mm-hmm.
then. So, like now there's LeBron's network uninterrupted.
Right.
You know, Bleacher Report. Like these media companies, these sports media brands, sports media companies really didn't exist at the time. Or at the beginning of what I was doing when I was doing what I was doing. And so like you know, it's so funny because I remember pitching an idea to Madison Square Garden for a sports show, and they didn't buy into it. But now I feel like if I were to pitch that same idea, they would
Right.
be into it. I just feel like I was ahead of the game, ahead of what everyone is doing now. But a large part of what I was doing at the time was just doing it myself, creating
Mm-hmm.
content on my own. Like I, you know, had a web series called A Man in the Game where I
You had a web
interviewed women in
series
sports.
as well?
Yep.
Wow.
Where I interview women in
How
sports.
did you manage, you know, doing all this stuff by yourself? Because that's the biggest thing being an entrepreneur. You don't have money to pay people.
Yeah.
How did you
So
manage, you know?
for the web series, I was fortunate because my brother has a production company,
Oh, okay.
and so he invested in that for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got really lucky from that perspective to have him, you know, financially support that endeavor. And it was great, though, because I was able to interview all of these women who, you know, whether they work in media, for the NBA, for nonprofits, like whatever they did, I was able to interview them and tell their stories.
Mm-hmm.
And this is obviously before, you know, like right now, like feminism and equality, gender equality.
Right. That's
and
a big
women
deal
have,
now.
it's a huge deal.
That wasn't before. This
But
was
at the
before all this happened. I mean, I do remember
exactly.
you really focusing on, you know, having a voice, a female voice in a heavily dominated male industry in sports. So I know you're not a copycat, girl. You an OG. You're an
Thank
OG.
you.
You're an OG.
Thank you.
I mean, and
Yeah.
sometimes I always say, well, I heard sometimes it's not the first one to do it; it's the first one to do it best.
It's that. Yep.
And I get
Yep.
frustrated. That's why I stopped doing things originally anymore. I'm like, I don't want to be.
Why?
Well, I mean, it's not. I still do it, but I have to be calculated because I don't want to be the first one to go through those mistakes, and then somebody watching me, and then somebody is
Yeah.
going to copy all everything that I do, all the sacrifices I make, and then you're gonna take the lessons learned by just watching me and just be successful at it. So I'm really kind of.
But I think, yeah, but I don't think that that's really the right way to approach it, because at
Hmm.
the end of the day, the thing that makes it work is you.
Right.
And there's only one Kelsey Cooper,
True.
so
True.
while there's so many copycats out there, they don't have your sauce. You
Mm.
have the original sauce, the original flavor that can't be duplicated, no
Right.
matter how many people try. And so that originality is, I feel like, the key differentiator between you doing something and someone else coming behind you and copying, what
Right.
you've already created.
You know what? I was having that conversation with another friend of mine. I'm like, I'm so frustrated because I'm starting something, making sacrifices and doing all these things from scratch, and then other people got flood the same, start doing the same thing and saturating the product and whatnot. I'm like,
Mhm.
my biggest frustration is like, I just want to get paid. Just let me get like a couple of checks before, because I just want to make my money back. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I want to make
Yeah.
my money
That's
back
real.
before it's no longer a thing. So that's like my
Yep.
biggest thing. But you're right. At the end of the day, you are, being original is the best thing to be. And one thing, my boy told me was like, you also gotta also think about once, you know, taking it to the next level. It forces you to keep moving. You can't be
Yeah.
comfortable with, oh,
Yep.
I'm successful at this, and so I'm gonna eat. So okay, you're successful at this, and then everybody started doing it, so you're not eating anymore. So you gotta figure out the next thing to.
I mean, I constantly think about Diddy and how he stays hungry. He's never complacent.
Mm,
And, he's always thinking about new ways. And I don't even see it as reinventing himself, but it's just, new ways to tap into his purpose or to stay passionate about different projects.
right.
And I just love his hunger.
Yeah.
And I just love his ability to just like attack. Like, he's always in attack mode. And I love that about him.
Yeah, I mean, I remember Diddy when MySpace was popping. It was all over MySpace. When Twitter was
Mhm.
popping, he was all over Twitter. When Instagram is a thing now, he's all over
Yeah.
Instagram. And Diddy's been in the game for a while, right? He's like what 50 something or close to 50 something.
Well, yeah. I
So
think him and Jay are about the same age, so about
right.
49, 48, 49.
I definitely look at him as an inspiration because you might not necessarily like the things that he does, but you gotta respect the man. He's been on top of his game for a while, and then that does not happen automatically. As we know, as entrepreneur, checks is not gonna
Yep.
arrive at your in your mailbox automatically. You gotta go out there and hunt, get those checks.
Exactly.
You know.
Exactly.
And it doesn't matter if
Exactly.
you're a beginner or seasoned entrepreneur. You can't just. It's not for the weak. It's not for the lazy.
Yep.
You know.
I agree. It's so true.
Right. So I know we've kind of dive into a lot of stuff. So you went from a chemistry major to psychology major to ESPN marketing to be a sports marketing company to be a blogger to be a personality, a platform,
Mhm.
and now you're going to accept this position with the New York Liberty. Is it the New York Liberty you got?
Yeah. Mhm.
As a VP. So how do you feel about your journey, in terms of any regrets, or if you had to do something
No,
differently, what would you do
I would
differently?
change nothing. I would
Mm,
change nothing. I think that everything that I've been able to experience over I guess these 9 years, has positioned me perfectly for where I am today. You know, I feel like you are exactly where you're supposed to be. And trust me, I've had so many detours.
But
I can't even begin to explain how many detours.
And this is why we're having this conversation, because I had like a grandiose plan when I left my job, and everything that you projected or forecasted, nothing ever happens the way you forecast, at least from my perspective.
For better and for worse.
Right. Exactly. For better, for worse. It could be a bad thing. It could be a negative thing. But you just got to know how to adjust and keep going, right? And it's all about survival of the fittest. And then, you know, the thing about it is being an entrepreneur that you really have to, whatever you decide, you know, you leaving this 9 to 5 to pursue, you got to be very passionate about it, because every day, and this is from my experience, you know, everything is going to be like, why am I doing this? You know, the logical things, logical signs is like, dude, you need to get a 9 to 5, but you're so passionate about what you're doing. You're like, no, I'm not going to do that. So you really have to be passionate about what you're doing. I mean, from my perspective, I think I
agree. And I think, and for me, one of the only reasons I'm accepting this position is because it is perfectly aligned with my purpose and my passion.
Right.
And it, like I said before, like everything that I've done building up to this point has positioned me to be able to succeed in this.
Right.
And, you know, as I reflect back on, like I said, like all the detours that I had, like at the time, a lot of it was frustrating. Some of it never made sense to me. But at the end of the day, like all of the dots connect.
Right.
And like I said, again, I'm supposed to be exactly where I am. And while it wasn't while things didn't occur in my timing, it happened in God's timing.
Right.
And so I can't complain about that. I can't look back and, you know, say that I have any regrets about that. And I think that even with my background is crazy as hell, you know, and on paper, it might not be what a traditional corporate person would be looking for this position. But understanding the product, understanding how traditional marketing is not the end all be all anymore. You need to be innovative. You need to be an out of the box thinker. You need to have a really strong knowledge of, you know, content creation, whether that's video, whether that's long form content, short form content, blogging, you know, whatever it is. I have that because I've taught myself all of that.
You know, I'm thinking about it. You said something earlier that's not a traditional approach, because none of this how-to did not exist. You know, everything was traditional. You know, you do certain things a certain way. So without knowing, the universe is preparing you for what to come, right?
Yep.
So you basically have to kind of like trust yourself and trust your journey and trust God to know that, you know, he's leading me somewhere and somewhere special.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
And you're a good example of that. I'm excited for you, girl.
Thank you, Kelsey.
When do you start full time?
Well, I technically started this week.
Okay.
I haven't been into the office yet. So actually tomorrow will be my first day into the office.
Oh, wow.
But
that's a good way to start on a Friday.
Yeah, right. So Monday I'll be like in for real. That'll be like official. But and I've been working, like I said, like I've been consulting for them for the past year. So I've already been working for the team and on emails and calls and things like that. But the scope is a little bit broader. Actually, a lot broader. Excuse me, a lot broader. But it's, you know, I'm excited about it.
Right.
It's nothing that I can't handle.
Right. Quick. I mean, this is one question I meant to ask you earlier.
Okay.
All this moves, ups and downs, in and out. How does being an entrepreneur, chasing your passion and your dreams affect your personal life?
Oh, Kelsey.
Come on.
Now,
Come on.
this is a good question. Okay. So the real answer is that I didn't really do a lot of dating because I just didn't feel like I was not to say that I wasn't in a position to offer anything to anyone, but financially things were really tight and challenging. And I really felt like I needed to focus on building and myself, like developing myself, developing my business. And so I didn't feel comfortable. I didn't feel like I could be a good partner to someone.
Right.
And so
it was by choice. It's not like you didn't have opportunities. You were being selfish. You were like, I need to focus on me and first focus on my hustle.
Especially because I've never been one to rely on a man.
Right.
And so, if I expect you to bring certain things to the table, then I expect myself to bring that to the table as well, so we can build together and create a great partnership.
Right.
And so when I felt like I was lacking in certain aspects of my life, I just didn't feel as desirable to other people. And I had people, that were interested, but I just wasn't interested in them for whatever reasons.
Right. I mean,
so I really didn't date a lot.
Right. I mean,
listen,
I
really didn't date a lot.
Another thing I find that, when you become an entrepreneur, your world is a unique place. Certain things I took for granted when I had a 9 to 5. You do certain things after work, that everybody else did. So you would run into a lot of people. One thing I realized is my schedule was way off from everybody else. So when it comes to meeting people, it was, it wasn't as much as if I was like a 9 to 5, because I would go to an after work mixer or some kind of professional gathering.
That's true too. Entrepreneurship is lonely.
Oh my God. It's so lonely. It's so lonely.
Yeah. It's so lonely.
It's lonely to a fault, because you're forced to kind of reckon with yourself, right? Anything, your weaknesses, or any weakness that you have, you're forced to address it head on. Either you address it head on, or you fail. So you have to, if you're not disciplined, you got to figure out how to be disciplined. Because if you're not disciplined in how to, get this project done on time for a check, you're not gonna get that check. So it's mentally it's hard sometimes.
And then the other thing was that I would guilt myself a lot because I didn't feel like I deserved to be out drinking or having a great dinner, or you know what I mean? It was like, I need to be working. I need to be working towards my goals, working towards securing more checks. And if I wasn't having success in those areas, then I'd be like, I don't really deserve to be out here flexing and flossing everything is sweet when it's not.
Right.
So that was another thing. That was another reason why, I kind of sequestered myself in some respects. And then the other part of it is just that, working from home is hard to your point, you're not leaving the office to then go to a mixer and then go home. Because when you work from home, you're home. For me, it's I'm in my apartment and I could easily work all day.
Right.
And when I was really focused on blogging and writing every day, I would wake up at 5 a.m., update my blog so it could be ready by 9, work during the day. And then I was up probably until about midnight or 1 o'clock because I was watching the late games, whether it be, the late NBA games on the West Coast or football games, if it's Monday Night Football or something like that. And then reading all the sports stories for that day to see what I was going to write on my blog the next day.
Wow.
So I was only sleeping 4 hours a night and doing it every single day, over and over and over. That was my pattern.
In total, how many years you think you were an entrepreneur?
Well, 9. So I left ESPN in 2010, March 2010, and this 2019, and now I'm going back to a full time. But don't get it twisted. I still have my side hustles. I'm still going to be writing.
Are you still you gonna continue your blog?
Well, I haven't really been updating my blog like I should.
Right.
But yes, at some point, I'm going to get to a place where I can focus on that, because that's really got me where I am today, and I just don't want to abandon it, and I feel like there's still a space for it. So whether, I'm able to get other writers to help with the workload, or, I somehow figure out time to write again, but I feel like that brand is always going to be a part of who I am.
All right. Are you going to still continue with the majors?
Yes, of course. So
that's dope.
Majors.
We didn't dive into that a little bit. So
okay.
At all. So let me know, what is the majors? I think it's a dope movement. But I'll let you tell the audience about the majors and all the dopeness about it.
So the Majors is a platform that my business partner, Ashley Blackwood, who's a sports publicist, she and I started in 2017 as a way to highlight, like you read earlier, young-ish sports influencers of color. So that's people like myself, people like her, and our peers who work in the industry, whether they work for leagues, teams, agencies, etc., who do the work, brands like ESPN, Bleacher Report, wherever, who are doing the work, pushing the culture forward, but don't get the credit that they deserve. So, when people have these sports conferences and you look at the panelists who are invited to speak, typically an older white man. However, they're not the ones that are actually creating the content that Bleacher Report is pushing out, and that's going viral. It's like people that look like us that are doing that, but you don't know that. So what we wanted to do with the majors was not wait for other people to give us shine and to highlight us, but take control of that and have a platform that's for us, by us, and that gives us the love that we deserve. So through that, our first year, we created a sports conference where we just invited sports influencers of color. And it's, so it's essentially like a diversity and inclusion initiative. But we had a conference that ended with a DJ and some food and some drinks. But throughout the day, there were about 6 panels where we talked about, sports topics that we explored from our perspective, from the perspective of people of color working in the industry. And then we've had like pop-up dinners. We've hosted smaller panels. We've hosted movie screenings. And it's another way for us within this industry to connect and to collaborate, to build. Through the majors, people have collaborated on creating podcasts together, other businesses together, and it's just been really great. So that's what the majors is, and we have a lot of work to do. I mean, it's challenging because, it's not our priority. I don't want to say it's not our priority,
but it's not your bread and butter right now. It's
exactly,
another passion that you guys have, that you guys are sacrificing for.
Exactly. And so while we see the opportunity there and people are really excited about it, we just have to do a better job of finding time to commit to being able to build the brand in the way that we envision it. But so the majors is definitely still going to be around. It's just another thing on our plate.
Right. Listen, girl, I could talk to you forever, right? Because you seem to have so much. I mean, I got so much other stuff that I want to talk to you about. I know it's been like an hour, almost an hour. So I want to wrap it up.
Okay.
Any advice that you would give to someone who frustrated, who's been overlooked on their 9 to 5, then you're looking to really pursue their passion and their dreams, what would you, any advice would you give those individuals?
I would say to trust your process, not the process, because I think that, just saying trust the process is very general. And I think that it lends itself to comparing yourself to others. And as you know, like that meme says that comparison is the thief of joy. And we tend to get in our heads a lot. And we tend to look at other people who we admire. We look at other people's journeys and we compare where we are to them. And that's just not a fair comparison because, one, you don't know what that other person has experienced to get where they are. And honestly, like, you don't know, like, if they've sold their soul to get where they are.
Right.
It could all be a front.
Right.
You just don't know.
You don't know.
So I would say to trust your process. And if it's coming from a place of, a genuine place, and it's truly something that is rooted in your passion, in your purpose, like ultimately people who come up with ideas and they want to pursue start their own business, they want to make money, but that can't be the only reason that you're in it, because if it is, then you're not going to, I don't think you'll be successful.
Right. You're going to run right back to a 9 to 5.
Yeah, you're going to struggle, and you have to be okay with struggling.
Right.
You have to be okay with failure. You have to be okay with hearing no.
Right.
You have to develop a thick skin, but ultimately you have to continue to trust and believe in yourself and to have a relationship with, like I said, like whatever that higher being is for you, because that'll be your guiding light. You'll know when it's time to give up, if it's time to give up. And the other thing is, like, don't feel shame if it doesn't work out.
Right.
Because there's so much courage and strength required to just step out there, period. And the fact that you're taking a risk on yourself, that's nothing to be ashamed about if it doesn't work out, because there's so many people who are miserable every single day and they wish that they had the courage to do what you're doing.
Right.
So yeah, just trust your process.
Awesome. I think that's great advice, actually. I have a saying that I developed over the years of being an entrepreneur. That's me talking to myself. Trust God, trust yourself, and trust your journey. And that's pretty much what you basically just said,
Yeah. Yep, it is.
Well, ladies and gentlemen,
there you go.
I've been rapping with my good friend, Shana Stephenson, Shana Renee, all sports, everything. She has an amazing story, but we got to wrap up. Thank you guys for listening, and tune in for the next episode of Reverse Ambition. Thanks, Shana. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Kelsey. Thanks for having me.